Good afternoon and welcome to the 5% Club Employer Audit Symposium for 2022. It's great to have so many of you with us this afternoon for what promises to be a really insightful and thought-provoking event. Just onto some housekeeping for this afternoon's event. You'll notice that your cameras are off and your mics are on mute, and we are recording this event for the benefit of those who unfortunately can't be with us this afternoon. Throughout the event this afternoon, it would be great if you could put your Q&A into chat, and we'll feed those to our panel later for questions. Also, if you are able to post on LinkedIn, Twitter and any other social media channel you use, that would be great. We'd encourage you to do that through the event and also once the event's complete. So over the course of the event this afternoon, you'll be hearing from our Research Director for the 2022 audit, Martin Burchill. Martin will unpack the findings from the report in two sessions. We'll be looking at large employers and the impact on small to medium size employers across all areas explored in the audit. And this is ahead of your individual reports being sent to you tomorrow. And also across this afternoon's event, we'll be showcasing our bronze, silver and gold awards presented to our members in the large and SME category. And I'd also like to thank our sponsors for this afternoon's event, the Investors in People, our gold sponsor, and our remaining sponsors, Accuracy UK, City and Guilds, the Open University, the School Outreach Company and the St Martin's Group. Thank you very much for your generosity that makes this event happen. So let's hand over to Martin and explore the research from the 2022 Employer Audit.
Thanks very much, Mark. Well, High Flyers Research is delighted to be the research partner for the 5% Club's Employer Audit. Let's make a start by looking at the research methodology for this year's audit. Well, we were really pleased that 129 members of the 5% Club took part in this year's research. They're drawn from a whole host of different employment sectors, business areas, and each of the employers completed a short questionnaire in June or July explaining about their earn and learn employment and what they've been doing in terms of recruitment over the previous year. All of the data was checked and verified through some follow-up emails and telephone interviews with members. Now, just to explain how the audit is compiled, we look at 5 key items of data. So we start with the employment, so how many earn and learn roles does an employer offer? Then we look at breadth and balance, so what's the balance between graduate jobs, apprenticeships and other earn as you learn roles. We look then at inclusion and social mobility, so each of the key diversity stats for an employer. Quality is all about the number of graduates and apprentices who complete their training and go on to a positive employment outlook at the end of their experience. And then we look at future growth. So how many earn and learn positions has an employer offered over the previous 12 months? What are their plans for the year ahead? And looking even further into the future as well, so that we can track just how many earn and learn opportunities there are across the individual employers. So we're going to begin by looking at the research results for our larger employers. Now, larger employers are defined as those who have at least 250 members of staff, and 85 organisations from the 5% Club entered on that basis this year. So we start with the analysis of how many earn and learn employees did they have. So this is our first category for employment. Now, if we start by looking at the scale of employers' workforces, well, it's a broad range from less than 1,000 employees right up to more than 10,000 employees. But the majority, you can see there, somewhere between 250 and 5,000 staff. Together, the organisations who entered for the audit this year, they have just short of 600,000 staff between them. So if we look then at the number of earn and learn employees, well, we can see there that at 18 organisations, they had up to 50 employees, whether that's graduates, apprentices, but other earn and learn positions. But at the very top end, there were 17 employers who had at least 500 employees on earn as you learn schemes. Between them, it means that just over 51,000 earn as you learn roles available across the 85 employers who took part in the audit. Now, a key result from the audit is to find out what percentage do those earn and learn roles represent within the workforce. So each of these bars represents an individual employer who's taken part in the audit. And at the very top end, you can see there are a number of employers who at least 15% of their workforce are in earn as you learn roles. Across the whole piece, 67 employers had reached the 5% mark. So that pushes them into the gold category of membership of the 5% club. We had another 11 employers who had between 2.5% and 5% of their workforce were earn and learn roles. And there are 7 organisations below the 2.5% mark. So that is what categorises our bronze, silver and gold employers for 2022. So in terms of the types of roles available, well, we've just picked out the 5 most common roles available across the employers within the larger category. Business administration, almost all of the employers were offering roles across business and admin. Lots of opportunities for engineering and manufacturing jobs, finance, technology and construction, all in the top 5 as well. But across the full piece, the 85 employers offering opportunities in more than 30 different employment areas and different types of job role. So we've looked at the total number of earn as you learn roles available at the larger employers who featured within the employer audit. We're now going to look at the breadth and balance of those opportunities. So what's the range of different types of role available? Well, for the 85 employers who took part in this year's audit, you can see all of them had opportunities through apprenticeships. They were most likely to be offering levels 4 to 7, so higher or degree apprenticeships. 80 employers were offering those schemes. 77 had level 3 apprenticeships, so the equivalent of A levels, something perhaps you do as you leave school at 16. And 59 employers had level 2 apprenticeships as well. 49 out of the 85 were offering degree placements students, and we can see there that over 70 had opportunities for new graduates as well. In terms of the number of opportunities, well, apprenticeships account for 4/5 of the total number of earn as you learn roles available from the employers who've taken part in the audit. So over 40,000 employees on apprenticeship programs, the biggest grouping being level 3 apprenticeships, but there were over 8,000 graduates on formal graduate training schemes as well, 1,100 doing degree placements, perhaps as part of their university course, typically 6 or 12 months in industry, and just over 2,000 on other earn as you learn roles. So in terms of volume, we can see there's a whole range of different numbers for the number of apprentices employed by those taking part in the audit. At the lower end, there are 31 organisations who have fewer than 50 apprentices, but at the very top end, 7 organisations who currently have at least 500 apprentices, one of whom actually employs over 10,000 apprentices for their organisation. If we compare that with graduates, well, slightly smaller numbers, but 46 employers offering up to 50 graduate places. The majority, though, somewhere between 51 and 250. Just 4 organisations employing over 500 graduates this year. So the third part of the employer audit is to look at the inclusion and social mobility of the employees who are on earn as you learn roles. So if we start looking at apprentices, well, we know that in terms of gender, 78% of apprentices employed by the employers taking part in the audit were male, 22% female, less than 1% class themselves as non-binary. In terms of age, well, 11% of apprentices were aged 16 to 18, 61% were 19 to 24 years old, and 28% were 25 years and beyond. And it's interesting, this is quite a different profile to the ones we see across the country. So if you look at apprenticeships nationally, the majority are over 25. So for 5% club members, you can see there nearly 3/4 are in the under 25 category. And in terms of ethnic background, 11% of apprentices classed as BAME. In terms of other information, though, many employers don't record details of sexuality, disabilities, or social mobility. So fewer than 1 in 5 had details of the sexuality of their apprentices. Only 1/4 recorded whether or not their apprentices had learning difficulties or disabilities. And in terms of social mobility, just 5 organisations able to measure whether or not their apprentices came from low-income families. So each of these averages are based on much smaller pieces of data. If we look at the diversity profile for graduates, we can see that 70% are men, 30% are female, and just under 1% as non-binary. This is a very different profile to those leaving university, though. We're almost at the point where it's a 40-60 split, so 40% male, 60% female, which reflects ever-increasing numbers of women choosing to go to university after school. But what these results reflect is that many of the employers taking part in the audit are hiring graduates for engineering or technology roles, which are still heavily dominated by men on university degree courses. In terms of age, well, 2/3 have come straight from university under the age of 25, but 1/3 are more mature graduates, 25 and above. In terms of ethnic background, 25% were BAME graduates. But again, the level of data available for sexuality, disabilities and social mobility is very limited. So all three of those figures are based on a very small sample size, but the average being 11% from low-income families, 1% with a learning difficulty or disability, and 3% LGBTQ+. Our fourth category looks at quality, and one of the ways we measure this is to look at the outcome of apprenticeships or graduate programs. So do trainees actually get to the end of their training, and if so, do they go on to a positive outcome? So that might be another apprenticeship, or it might be permanent employment with the employer. So if we start by looking at completion rates for apprenticeships, well, all of these are very high, very impressive. There are 12 organisations who said they retained 100% of their apprentices. So they not only made it through to the end of the apprenticeship, but they completed the apprenticeship successfully. There's another 47 organisations where at least 80% of apprentices successfully complete, and just 13 organisations where the completion rate was 70% or less. And if we compare this nationally, well, it's interesting, the completion rates for all apprenticeships are hovering around the 50% mark. So you can see that all of the employers taking part in the audit are achieving much better rates than that. If we look then at those who go on to further employment, well, it's a similarly impressive piece. So 12 organisations, 100% of their apprentices do continue in employment at the end of their apprenticeships, and many others in the other categories there, just 15 organisations where less than 70% of apprentices are retained into further roles. If we look at the figures for graduate programs, again, equally impressive. 23 employers retaining all 100% of their graduates through to the end of the training program, typically 18 months or 2 years in most cases. So 100% of graduates completing their programs. The majority there, somewhere between 70 and 99%, and just 6 organisations where less than 70% complete their training. And in terms of going on to further employment, well, most graduates remaining with the employer at the end of their graduate training. Again, only a very low percentage with the lower completion rates. So the fifth and final category within the employer audit is to look at future growth. So recording what level of recruitment employers have been through for different Earn As You Learn roles over the last 12 months compared to their plans for the year ahead and even beyond that. So let's start with the picture for 21-22. We're following the academic year, so this is a record of those who were recruited by the end of July 2022. 15,779 employees were recruited onto apprenticeship programs, the biggest grouping being those on level 2 and level 3, and there were just short of 5,000 graduates. Now, if we compare the profile then with the employers' plans for the year ahead, you can see that in almost all categories the numbers do increase. So a jump to over 19,000 apprenticeships, a growth for both level 2 and level 3, slightly fewer higher apprenticeships, those at levels 4 to 7, and more graduate positions. So if these targets are accurate, it means a 25% increase between the year to 22 compared to the year ahead to July 2023. So some significant growth ahead for these larger employers and the opportunities that they offer for earn and learn roles. Right, so let's draw all of that together. We've seen that 85 larger employers took part in this year's employer audit. Their combined workforce, over 588,000 staff, of whom more than 51,000 in earn and learn roles. So it means that across this piece of the audit, nearly 9% of employees working in earn as you learn roles. At 67 employers, at least 5% are in earn as you learn roles. So that puts them in the gold category for 5% club. And employers between them, 40,000 apprentices, over 8,000 graduates, and over 1,100 degree placement students. And we've just seen, in terms of diversity, well, 78% of apprentices are men, 11% are BAME, 72% aged under 25 years, and around 1 in 7 from low-income families. A slightly more balanced profile for graduates, 70% men, 25% BAME, and 2/3 under the age of 25. And as we've seen, some very high completion rates. So looking at the numbers who make it through to the end of their training versus those who go on to permanent employment or more training opportunities, some very high success rates. And the good news that earn and learn recruitment is set to rise in the year ahead. So for those targets that have been set through to July 23, an expectation that the number of opportunities will increase by around 25%. So there we are, that's the large employers who took part in this year's employer audit. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Martin. There's a huge amount to digest from that, and I know people will be stimulated by what you've said. So please, if you do have questions which you wish to pose to Martin for later in this symposium, then please do so in our chat. We'd encourage you to do that. And as before, please don't forget to mention us on your social media channels, LinkedIn and Twitter. So Martin's giving you a good insight into what we've been up to in the research. So now what we'll do is reveal our bronze, silver and gold awards, starting off with the 85 large employers. Excellent, and that was really good to see so many of our large employers being awarded bronze, silver and gold membership for 2022 to 2023. So at this point, it's probably worth just explaining the difference between the awarded membership in the bronze, silver and gold category and the awards we are making at our celebration event at the House of Lords on the 30th of November. Bronze, silver and gold membership is for a year, but the UK National Employer Earn and Learn Awards will be made, as I say, on the 30th November at the House of Lords. This was a trial this year, but it's an automated process, so there was no additional information required from participants. And the panel was looked through the submissions you've made, and we are making these awards in 6 categories. So the categories largely mirror the elements of the Earn and Learn audit. We look at your overall percentage, we look at plans for growth, we look at the breadth of offer, we look at quality, and we also look at the protected characteristics and social mobility. And we'll be making 5 awards in 2 categories for the large and the SME employer. And then for a large and SME employer, we've got our overall Employer of the Year, which takes a view of all of those constituent parts and makes the award to those employers who we feel have contributed most to our purpose through the Employer Audit. So I mentioned earlier our sponsors, and we'd really like to thank them again for helping us with the Employer Audit and making it possible this year. The sponsors, as I said, were Investors in People, Accuracy UK, City and Guilds, the Open University, the St Martin's Group and the School Outreach Company. We asked each of them to produce a short video to explain what they do, so let's hear from them now.
Accuracy UK is delighted to support the 5% Club. Financial, project and disputes consultancy can be intense and demanding, yet we're a company that lives by core values such as community and mutual respect. As such, we invest significant resources in our people and their development. We're therefore delighted to celebrate companies offering opportunity at scale across their organisations. We're proud to sponsor this year's highest percentage of the workforce award. Congratulations to all the nominees.
At the St Martin's Group, we're really proud to be sponsoring this year's Growth SME and also Large Employer Growth Awards at the 5% Club's Earn and Learn Awards ceremony.
As an employer member of the St Martin's Group, I think first of all we get great access to key policymakers and decision makers. I think as well it gives us great collaborative opportunities with both training providers and employment assessment organisations.
Since 1878, we forged talents, industrialized skills, and nurtured minds. We all face challenges, but it is how we come together to overcome them that counts. We work with educators, employers, and governments in over 100 countries to get people into a job, progress in the job, and onto the next job. We are apprenticeships, T-levels, technicals, and traineeships. We are engineering, health and care, and construction. We are aspiration, opportunity, and ambition. We are City and Guilds. No one is better qualified.
Excellent, and thanks again to our sponsors for those videos with short explainers as to what they were doing. What we're going to do now, we're going to hand over again to our Research Director for the Employer Audit, Martin Burchill. And this time, Martin is going to take us through the SME category. And we were delighted that this year we had 44 SMEs participate. So Martin, over to you.
Thanks very much, Mark. Well, we heard earlier that the larger employers who entered this year's audit offering over 50,000 Earn As You Learn opportunities. Let's take a look and see what some of the SMEs have been doing in terms of their recruitment for Earn As You Learn opportunities. So just a reminder as to what goes into the audit, we've asked all of the SMEs about the total number of Earn As You Learn employees that they're currently employing. We've looked at the breadth and balance, so are they offering opportunities for apprentices or for graduates or for sponsored students? We're looking at the diversity of those that they've employed, the quality of their programs and the future growth that they're looking at for their organisations. So we start the analysis looking at employment. So firstly, how big are the employers who are taking part in this year's audit? Well, we can see there the majority are employing somewhere between 101 and 250 employees, but we do have 10 SMEs with just 50 staff or fewer. Between them, a workforce of around 4,800 staff across the 44 organisations who entered for the audit this year. In terms of the number of Earn As You Learn employees, well, 19 employers had up to 10, either on apprenticeship programs or graduate programs. We had 15 organisations who had up to 25 Earn As You Learn employees, but 10 organisations with 26 or more. And between them, over 700 positions in Earn As You Learn opportunities. So it means that around 1 in 6 of the staff at the organisations who've taken part in the audit from the SMEs are in Earn As You Learn roles. And then if we look at the percentage, well, you can see there at this very top end, we have 3 organisations with at least 50% of their staff on training programs. And across the full 44, well, 40 out of the 44 are over the 5% mark. There are 3 organisations with between 2.5% and 5%, and just one with less than 2.5% of their workforce in Earn As You Learn positions. So of course that equates to our all-important gold, silver and bronze categories for 5% club membership. Our second category looks at breadth and balance. So we know how many opportunities SMEs are providing, but what's the balance between graduate programs, apprenticeships, sponsored students and other roles? Well, if we look at the opportunities available, 42 out of 44 employers were offering apprenticeships. You can see 23, so approximately half of the group offering graduate programs. And within the apprenticeships, the biggest grouping being the level 3 apprenticeships. And other roles, well, 11 employers offering degree placement students and 17 employers offering other types of training. If we look at the total number of roles, well, apprenticeships were by far the biggest grouping, over 400 apprenticeships within these employers. Lots of opportunities across level 2, level 3 and the higher apprenticeships as well. Just over 100 graduate positions and 38 on sponsored degree placement students and 146 other roles. So really good variety across the SMEs taking part in the audit. Our third category looks at inclusion and social mobility. And just like when we asked the larger employers about the makeup of the Earn As You Learn employees, we've done exactly the same for the SMEs as well. So this is the profile, the diversity profile for the apprentices employed by SMEs. 86% men, 14% women, less than 1% as non-binary. In terms of age profile, well, around about a fifth age 16 to 18, nearly 3/4 age 19 to 24, and 10% 25 and above. And in terms of ethnic background, 10% were BAME apprentices. So a different profile to the larger employers, more men, but a younger profile for those apprentices. In terms of the other indicators though, very difficult to get data from the SMEs, so not enough detail in terms of apprentices' sexuality or indeed their social mobility, the low-income families, we don't have data on that, but we know that 4% of the apprentices at SMEs had a learning difficulty or disability. If we look at the profile for graduates, well, 2/3 are men, 1/3 are women, 75% are in the under 24 category, a quarter 25 years and above, and 1 in 7 were BAME graduates. But again, very little data on some of the other indicators, not enough information to give a profile for either sexuality, disability, or social mobility. Our next category looks at the quality of earn-as-you-learn opportunities that SMEs are providing. And the way we look at that is, well, looking at the completion rate. So how many of their apprentices make it through to the end of their apprenticeship and then potentially go on to other employment with the SME? Well, the great news is that half of all of the employers offering apprenticeships within the SME category, 100% of their apprentices are getting it to the end of their apprenticeship program. And the completion rates for the others really very high indeed. So most, at least 70% getting through to the end of their apprenticeship. And a similarly positive score for graduate programs. 20 employers, 100% of their graduates completing the graduate training. And you can see there are just 3 organisations where a few of their graduates don't make it through to the end of the training programme. And our final category is looking at the future growth. So how many opportunities will SMEs have in future recruiting years? Well, we start by taking stock of what's happened over the last 12 months. So in the year to July 2022, the SMEs between them recruited 237 apprenticeships, and the biggest grouping being level 2, but healthy numbers across level 3 and the higher apprenticeships as well, and 72 new graduates taken on by the 44 employers within the category. If we look ahead to the 2022-23 recruiting cycle, slightly fewer apprenticeships on offer, so 222, but growth in 2 of the key levels, and more graduate opportunities, so over 100 expected for the year ahead. So let's try and draw all of that together. As we've heard, 44 SMEs took part in this year's employer audit. Very impressive numbers, 4,800 employees, 700 of whom are in earn and learn roles. So that's 15%, so a much higher proportion than we saw with some of the larger employers. At 40 employers, at least 5% are in earn as you learn roles, so that puts them into the gold category for 5% club membership. And we've seen that both apprentices and graduates have very high completion rates. Over half of apprenticeships are being 100% completion rate. And in terms of the outlook for the next 12 months, a cautiously optimistic one with more roles overall, a similar number of apprenticeships, but some strong growth with graduates. And just a reminder that all the data you've seen today is in the individual employer audit reports that you'll be receiving tomorrow. There'll be full details of both the general results and benchmarking data for your own organisation. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Martin. As always, some more insightful and really informative information from the research there. And probably like many of you watching that, I'm always staggered by the volume of earn and learn provided by our SME members. Some real high volumes there, which is always great to see. So as we did with the large employers, what we'll do now is we'll give a rundown of the 44 SME employers and the awards made in the bronze, silver and gold categories for 2022. So congratulations again to all of our SME bronze, silver and gold memberships awarded for 2022 and 2023. So you'll have noticed I've been joined on this side of the studio with Martin, who's just hot-footed over from the presentation screen. So welcome to the desk, Martin.
Thanks, Mark.
Just before we go into questions and answers, I'd just like to remind you all, please to use social media, that's Twitter and LinkedIn, to post about today's event, and more importantly, about your award of bronze, silver and gold. We really do want to celebrate the success you've had. So whilst we've been on air, there's been lots of questions coming through in the chat, and we'll put those to Martin as we go through. But one of the questions I'm often asked is what do people actually do with their bronze, silver and gold awards? And that's a really good question. And whilst people celebrate it, what we'd also encourage people to do is start to think about how it can be used in the ESG context. That's the environmental, social and governance aspects. Because actually, I think making more of shouting out more about the social impact that companies are doing is becoming increasingly important. And actually using the credentials such as the bronze, silver and gold from the 5% Club or other such schemes is a great thing to do. And I know, Martin, you're involved in a huge range of those schemes as well. So I don't know if you've got perspectives on that as well.
Well, I think that the real power of being awarded gold, silver or bronze is it's an industry benchmark. So this is all about signalling to other employers the commitment that you're making to entry-level recruitment, offering young people opportunities and all of the other earn and learn opportunities that are available across the employers. So, I mean, today is a fantastic celebration of what employers have achieved, but many people, I think, using their benchmarks to do even better for future years.
Brilliant. And we've seen some great examples of that this year. Kia, for instance, you had a market day and they used the fact they were bronze, silver and gold or a gold member of the 5% Club as part of that process. And Balfour Beatty also used their gold membership in their annual company reports, which is great to see. So excuse me while I put glasses on because I've got to that certain stage in life. And we have got the backroom team. Jill and Helen are out there taking your questions and they've been feeding those through. So the first question we've got really came in over the last couple of weeks, Martin, which is, are there any sort of trends, key trends we've been seeing that emerge when we compare last year's to this year's report?
So it's interesting. Obviously, last year's, the 2021 audit came hot on the heels of all of the disruption from the pandemic. So lots of employers, I think, had under-recruited in 2020, only then to be really stepping things up in 2021. So the growth figures a year ago were really very significant. What we've seen since is employers, I think, catching up. And whilst there are some healthy growth predictions for the year ahead, I think they're not quite as bold as they were 12 months ago.
Interesting. Perhaps we'll circle back to that later, given some of the announcements.
Well, based on today's news, yes.
Yeah, certainly. And if you've got questions on that, in particular how the current economic situation is affecting onboarding of apprentices and graduates, and please put those in chat. So we've got a couple come in very similar here. So Hannah Connors from Network Rail and Anthony Knowles from DFE, who I know is known to you for other schemes, both have asked a similar question around what were the other earn and learn roles. So the apprenticeships is clear, the grad schemes, but the aspects we're counting on the other are not often clear to people. Could you perhaps elaborate on that, Martin?
Yes, of course. Well, good afternoon, Anthony. Hi to Hannah. Thanks for the question. Other covers, the definition of 5% Club is earn and learn roles. So it covers things like Kickstart, T-levels. 1 in 3 of the larger employers was supporting Kickstart. A quarter was supporting T-levels. And a number of employers supporting employees through things like CIMA and ACCA, so professional qualifications. And in a few cases as well, organisations who are offering their own apprenticeship outside of the official definition of them. So there are a number of different initiatives, but it's all about trying to recognise employers for offering structured training and development for their employees, underpinned by the philosophy of earn and learn.
Thanks, Martin. And just to reiterate to people that the 5% Club is approaching our 10th anniversary next year, 2023, and the apprenticeships and the graduate scheme aspect of the original definition still holds true. But 10 years ago, we talked about sponsored students as part of that. And that's where the other is come from. And sponsored students, the whole landscape has changed in that 10-year period. And I'm sure as we go over the next 10 years, there'll be other schemes announced which will qualify as earn and learn. And therefore, we're always adapting what that definition is. And really, we'd reach out to you. If you've got ideas or views as to, or constructive challenge as to what you think that other could be, then please open that discussion with us. I know during the audit process, there's always a healthy debate about that, but we can come back to that. So other questions we've got. Tony Ellender from Balfour Beatty, thanks for the question, Tony, has asked the question about the fact that are our figures somewhat distorted because of the sectors we're in? We've got lots of engineering companies, lots of construction companies, which have got some very stereotypical employment, and there's some biases in there. Do you think that's skewing the overall figures?
Well, you might remember my first slide, one of my first slides at the beginning of the research briefings, just looked at the type of jobs that 5% Club members are offering, and engineering jobs very close to the top of the list, technology jobs. And I guess if we look at the pipeline of talent that's coming through universities or coming out of school, there are still many more men choosing to go on to university to do STEM subjects compared to women. And if you look at something like engineering, it's about a 3-to-1 ratio. So that definitely feeds through in terms of the diversity stats that we're seeing. Whether that's where employers want to be, though, I think is a very different question, because one of the real benefits from benchmarking is for people to be able to see whether or not what they're doing actually reflects the wider society. And it's very clear. I mean, we know that only 40% of those who go to university are men. It's 60% women now. So the idea that there are pockets of particular subjects or disciplines where those stats are very different, it just helps refocus people on the fact that there is a lot of work to do in those areas.
And I'd just like to reiterate some of the points I made in the original briefings for this exercise, which we conducted back in March through to about June period. And what we find is lots of organisations, particularly the boards, are putting pressure on the HR teams, the L&D teams, the early careers teams to increase diversity. And what we've got with the data that you'll all get tomorrow in your benchmark reports is not only can you look at how you fare, but you can also see where there are gaps in the data. And actually, one of the things, as Martin suggested, is look at the data, look to see where the number of responses were low, because that just shows how problematic this space can be. Some of the protected characteristics are straightforward to answer questions on, but what we found is a number of the protected characteristics were really hard, as was social mobility. The key point, though, is the audit, the report, the award is the start of a process, not the end. And we'd really encourage people to draw insights from the report and then come up with some action plans on the back of that. And then on the basis of themes that emerge from this year's report, what we'll do is we'll use that to shape the events we run next year, perhaps to do deep dives with the audit alumni of 2022 to 23 to look at these in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
And we did one of those last year with you, Martin, so that's great. So what other questions we got coming in? We got James from the School Outreach Company. Thanks, James. Thanks very much for your support and offering huge congratulations to all the winners. So thanks for that, James. Much appreciated. Debbie from Kingerley put a helpful comment. Perhaps this is a question as well. Recently managed to secure funding for our apprenticeships in the form of laptop tools and even driving lessons from our local LEP. Might be an opportunity for other members, depending on funding from that your LEP has managed to secure. And I think that's an interesting point about what support is there more broadly available to support apprentices. And I know certainly colleagues in the construction and built environment sector find that their apprentices perhaps are disadvantaged based on the fact that the apprenticeship isn't in a fixed place, it's site-based, and they've got a whole bunch of issues associated with that. So if any of you've got any additional comments that support what Debbie said, or have got other ideas, if you could put those into the comments, that would be great. Good question here from Sian Sian Reborg at the Hill Group. Would we consider doing a platinum? Yes, I think we would consider that, but we'll just hold back on that. And I'll offer it to Martin about awards and award proliferation, if that's a good idea.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because so many of the employers who've entered for the audit have gone way beyond the 5%. So they really are not just committing to their pledge that they've made for the 5% club, but they're going far beyond as well. So being able to recognise them in the future, I think, would be a lovely idea. And if you look at the SMEs this year, very nearly 15% of their employees were on earn and learn roles. So 1 in 6 within the SMEs. So it means that culturally, 5% is a good staging point, but it's not the end of the story, is it?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think we would consider platinum. We've talked about it a lot, but I think if you go to platinum, we would take a more sophisticated view on the data. And we're just holding off at this stage because we've set the bar as the gold standard, because that's what employers commit to when they sign the charter, and that's why the 5% is the gold standard. I think platinum will be a more holistic assessment, as Martin suggests, looking at the other aspects, because the 5% purpose is to inspire employers to help provide increased levels of workplace learning, but also to look at the accessibility and inclusion of those schemes. And I think the platinum would really start to major on the accessibility and inclusion as opposed to the absolute numbers. But it'd be great to say, yeah, if you're above 10%, you'd be platinum. But if we do that, it just won't be that simple.
So watch this space.
Watch this space, yeah. There are other things coming along. And on that note, this year, of course, we've got the UK Employer National Earn and Learn Awards, which we're announcing at the House of Lords on the 30th of November, and that's a departure. It's an automated process, which makes the judging of it that much easier. But actually, there's some really good results in that. We've done the judging, we've got the results, and we'll announce those on the 30th. So I'd encourage you all to come to that event to find that result. So we've got another question or a view is: can we offer any advice as to how to interpret the reports and implement action plans? I mean, Martin, you've got lots of experience from some of the other schemes you run. Have you got perspectives on this?
So I think it's interesting. There is a lot of data within the reports. They're best part of 40 pages of information and analysis. And it's broken down in the 5 sections that have built up the employer audit. So it's designed to be as user-friendly as we can make it. But in each case, for larger employers, you'll be able to see exactly how you benchmark for each of the data points that you provided. And it may well be that you're very happy with your positioning, but we have a whole series of charts within the report which show each individual employer. So with the highest value on the left, tailing off to the lowest values on the right. So it gives you a sense straight away as to where you are in that landscape. So whether it's diversity, whether it's the outcomes, the quality of graduate and apprenticeship programs, or indeed just the overall volume of earn and learn roles, you can see straight away where you fit in. So you might have a perception as to a particular result being good, middle or bad. Actually, you can see the reality of that when it's then set against other employers. And then that, of course, once you've formed a view as to where your data point is, you then have an opportunity to decide whether you need to take action or whether you want to take action to improve that in the future.
And I would echo everything Martin has said there. I think the reason we've designed the scheme in the way we have is we want to celebrate success. Everybody likes to be a bronze, silver or gold something. We've done that. But actually, the report gives you a huge amount of data, a huge amount of information. And the trick is to convert that into the action plans. Compare where you are, look at the areas where you're doing well, look at the areas perhaps where there's room for improvement. Last year, when we went through the process, there was huge amounts of discussion around inclusion and social mobility. And actually, that still remains an area where employers do struggle, particularly in correlating HR data in large companies. The HR department may have the data, but it's not broken down in the L&D area, and people don't understand the demographics and particular issues around L&D and how to make L&D more inclusive. So you can see there's an HR-wide perspective to take, but from an L&D perspective, to look at what are the particular barriers associated with each of the workplace learners and how they can be overcome. So we hope it provides a catalyst. What I would say is the 5% activity can only go so far, and that's where we've got a whole range of partners which we would encourage you to look at if you had a particular problem. So, if it's at the front end of the activity, if it's around school outreach, then we can work with the School Outreach Company, with Youth Employment UK. We've got relationships with World Skills, the Open University IIP. IIP do the We Invest in Apprenticeships programme. That allows you to do a really deep dive into the mechanics of what makes a really good and inclusive apprenticeship programme. And there's a whole range of other schemes. So I think where you are all at as organisations is you know that you want to find out where you are, what you can do and how you can improve situations. But there's a whole range of different approaches that can be taken. So we've got another comment here, which is a great comment from Alison Robson from Department for Education. Thanks, Alison, and congratulations on the gold. It's following on from the LEP suggestion, and it's a great idea about how can we create working groups or communities of interest around the employer audit for people to get together and perhaps share information and share good practice. Well, you know, in many respects, that's why the 5% Club exists. But last year, following on from the inaugural approach, a group of all the SMEs got together, because it was a smaller group, created a WhatsApp community and started to network to share best practice. Because as SMEs in particular, it's very easy to feel isolated, because probably in the SME, the HR department is one person and they've got nowhere else to go for advice. So to create that community was a great way forward. And if there are groups of you who wish to get together and wish for us to facilitate something like the WhatsApp group or other such groups, we'd be very happy to do that. And have you seen other areas, Martin, where that's been used?
I was just going to say there's lots of potential for that, because you've seen all the logos of the employers who've taken part in the audit. You'll be able to pick out others in your sector and your industry, and putting together some of those direct connections, whether it's a WhatsApp group, whether it's an informal another Zoom call or a seminar. That is just the way that people can share ideas and build on some of the new initiatives.
Excellent. So we mentioned at the outset there's been some interesting announcements today, a bit of doom and gloom perhaps from the Governor of the Bank of England, and that builds on the activities in America yesterday. If there is likely to be this sort of heralded recession for 2 years, you've been in this business for a long period of time. What have you seen employers do at this point, and what should they do versus what's their gut instinct?
Well, we have had quite a few questions since the Bank of England put interest rates up to 3%, 2.5 hours ago. It is a very hard question to answer in terms of what happens next. But if we look back over the experience of, I think we've lived through 5 or 6 recessions in the 30 years that I've been researching the employment market. In almost every instance, sadly, recruitment is one of the first things to be cut. So if there was a message for now, I think it is that employers are going to be under considerable pressure to be reducing their commitment to apprentices and to graduates over the next 12 months. If we look at the graduate job market over the last 3 years, very badly hit by the pandemic, recruiters literally stopping recruiting overnight, a big bounce back in 2021, and a very positive 2022 as they make up for lost time. But it does look now as if we are going into a 2-year recession, 23 and 24 are likely to see smaller numbers recruited. But I think one of the things which most employers have realised, certainly over the downturn 12 years ago and the big recession in the early 2000s, was that recruitment isn't about filling vacancies for next September. It's about taking trainees on who become really useful employees another year, another 2 years down the line. So whilst it's very painful for a business to have to commit to the cost of recruitment, actually it more than pays for itself as you come out the other side, because you then have the workforce in place to take advantage of the upturn when it eventually comes. So it's a real tussle within organisations, because the FD will be saying one thing and the HR department and recruiters will be saying the exact opposite, to try and build for the future and be ready for when the better times do eventually return.
No, it's some very sage advice there, Martin. And certainly I've been involved with recruitment over a number of years, and it's all about holding your nerve. And I can remember when I first started with the 5% Club, we had a first event, which was we were lucky to have both Robert Halfon and Gillian Keegan at. Obviously, they've changed roles since. But in there, Leo Quinn, who's our founder and Group CEO of Balfour Beatty, did labour the point about companies holding their nerve. And in many respects, the good companies, those with the strategic foresight beyond just existing, were those that actually said, you know what, there's opportunity in the downturn. Let's recruit more rather than ease back. Of course, the downside of that, with the lack of recruitment, was the competition for skills and all the poaching of the people who left the grad schemes, who actually started in 2020 this year. So we're getting close to running out of questions here. What we've got is lots and lots of questions apparently coming into Jill and Helen around network and around meeting each other and about the opportunity at the House of Lords. And it's been great this year. We've run a couple of really successful networking events with IIP and the Association of Apprentices, and they've been really great. And it's been good to see so many people in the L&D and workplace learning space getting together at those events, sharing ideas, getting connections, sharing problems, and moving forward. So we will be hosting a range of networking events with a range of partners moving forward. I mentioned the fact that next year is our 10th anniversary, so expect some revelations in the coming months about a number of special networking events and events we'll have next year. And what we'll do, because the audit alumni are so important to us because of what you've done and how you're demonstrating the social impact that you're delivering, we will be running a number of events which are open exclusively to the audit alumni. So watch this space. And I suppose really that takes. I'm just looking at the clock and the fact that we've run through the process and we've got 5 minutes left. Martin, before we go into the sort of closing and just to give one final push for any comments or questions people may have you got any reflections on where we've gone with the audit, given that we generated this in the midst of lockdown and it's moved forward and it's grown significantly? How do you see it going forward and sitting in the landscape?
I think it's been really exciting because we had over 70 employers take part in the first audit in 2021, very nearly 130 taking part this year. And of course, 5% Club continues to grow. So over 700 members now, and more organisations joining each week. And the hope is that the 5% employer audit will be able to continue growing, will continue to reflect the successes and the challenges that those employers are going through. And when we first talked about this, it wasn't simply a year-to-year activity. This is about building over time to have a real force for good in terms of making sure that employers really take their commitment to 5% seriously, and continue to grow the earn and learn opportunities for the next generation. So it's an incredibly exciting thing to be part of.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Martin. And as Martin says, we do continue to grow. So at last count, we were nearly 750 members, and we're really pleased that we've got some key government departments within that membership. And actually, we're quite blessed with the new Secretary of State for Education and the Minister for Skills. I mentioned Gillian Keegan and the Right Honourable Robert Halfon, both of whom are great champions of the 5% Club. And Gillian Keegan, when she was Minister for Skills and Apprenticeship, did actually push for all government departments to be part of our movement. And that's really why the Department for Education joined and have got to gold status today, and we'll hope to push that forward. Our ambition for next year, our 10th anniversary year, is to get to 1,000 members, which was the challenge we were set some years ago by Robert Halfon. I know Helen is now sweating in the back room as I've said that, but hey, what's the challenge between friends for our 10th anniversary year? But given that we're growing by 20%, I think that's a real thing we can achieve. And actually, if any of you out there know of companies that are considering what they might do, then please let them know about the 5% Club. So, with no more questions, I suppose it falls to me to draw proceedings to a close. What I would do is thank you all for participating. It does seem a long time ago when we were talking about Omicron variants and still in lockdowns. We were going through the initial stages of the briefings back in February and March. But thank you for sticking with the scheme, for going with the scheme, for working with us, and for making it such a success and for helping it to grow. Clearly, we're partway through the process. We've done the symposium today. You've got the information. The audit reports will be pushed out tomorrow. A recording of the event will be issued to you, and we'd encourage you to share it with other colleagues, particularly those who can use the data to help with their insights. And we'd encourage you all to come to our celebration event at the House of Lords. We've got many of you signed up to do so, and it'll be great to see you there, which comes back to the point on networking, a great opportunity to network, to meet people, and to talk with others and shared experiences, and perhaps most importantly, to take a few more photos of your bronze, silver or golds to put on social media. And on that point, I really would encourage you to shout long and loud about your achievement today. We'll echo all you do, but if you do on LinkedIn and Twitter, that would be fantastic, just to let other people know what you've achieved, because it's a fantastic achievement. I would just like to thank again all of our sponsors. We've mentioned them all earlier, and of course the patrons and patron sponsors of the 5% Club for your support in making this happen. As I said, the benchmarking reports will be issued tomorrow, so watch for those. If you haven't got one, do check your junk email. That's probably the first place to look before you phone Jill or Helen. But actually they should be with you as soon as we can. So thank you all for joining. I think we had just over 130 participants at one stage today. So thank you very much for coming along. We'd welcome any feedback you've got, but please do make the most of the information you get. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you again at the celebration event and encouraging you to participate again in the 2023-24 audit when it's announced in March. But see you at the House of Lords. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.